Budget and Finance meeting to order. Today is Monday, February the 5th, 2024. I do detect a quorum. I would like to remind all committee members to please put your yellow sign up so that we can easily identify you if you are on the committee. We do have 3 people that signed up for our public comments period. Pursuant to Council Rule 28 and state law, public comment is limited to matters that are about items on the agenda. You may only speak about the items that appear on the agenda. First up, we have Steve Ryder speaking on RS 2024-215. Mr. Ryder, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm a member of the Nashville Davidson County Continuum of Care General Membership. I want to just get some concerns on the record today. The COC General Membership transferred the collaborative applicant lead to Office of Homeless Services from the previous entity. What I want to do is I want to have the general membership play a larger role as far as how the planning grant monies are allocated. We're going to be facing a real fiscal cliff down the road. We've got a lot of money from the federal government. That's going to be coming to an end. We had money from the state, the TANF money, the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, which was really great. We're able to house 100 families in less than 100 days. But that money's coming to an end. And so I really think it's important that the general membership and everybody in the COC, that we start looking at how we're going to get money, because money is really needed to house people. That's the key. We don't need to go out there and have consultants come here and say, let's go just change the seats on the deck of the Titanic. That's just not going to get us where we need to go. So having a financial consultant, somebody who understands housing finance, somebody who can get us moving forward, because right now I think we're getting consultants that are just coming in here and telling us we should organize this way, or this way. I really have a concern about basically how the continuum of care operates, because I think it's a flawed process, frankly. But until we get congressional authorization to change that, have to work in the system that we have. So I think I'd like to see too, and I want this on the record, that all the consultant reports that come, that all the COC members have a chance to look at that. Sometimes there's recommendations that are put out there and we have no idea the reasoning behind that. So every consultant report that comes that this body funds or the federal government funds, the COC general membership and all the COC should be entitled to see those documents. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much. Oh, by the way, I'm not blindsiding anybody. I talked with the Office of Homeless Services. I've talked with Bill and April, so they knew I was going to speak today. So I'm not asking for a deferral or anything like that. I'm going to have some further conversations with them tomorrow, but I just want to get these concerns on the record. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much. Next, we have Rebecca Ratz speaking on BL 2024-158. You're recognized.
Good afternoon. My name is Rebecca Ratz. I am the Executive Director for the Friends of Shelby Park and Bottoms, and I'm just here wholeheartedly supporting the bill for the lease between Metro and Friends of Shelby for the Naval Reserve Training Facility, and if you have any questions about it during your discussion, I'm here to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And next we have Michael Lacey for RS 2024-210.
I speak in support of RS 2024-210, but have requests for follow-through on appropriations like this. As a former employee in the Mayor's Office of Community Safety for both Mayors Cooper and O'Connell, I ask that in your budgeting process you hold this administration accountable to the progressive agenda they campaigned on. By my count, this administration has already helped derail at least 3 progressive programs designed to aid the most vulnerable residents with no plans to replace them. I know they're playing hardball with their budget agenda, most especially with the minority caucus. Please hold them accountable to actually deliver the programs we need. The mayor said on day 1 he would have a community safety plan. After 2 months of working for the new administration, they never had a single meeting with their Office of Community Safety, so I quit, and a week later the office was dissolved and the programs were transferred. None of the council-approved community safety grant recipients have been paid since October, and I've yet to see a community safety plan. Last year, the City Council approved $10 million for participatory budget prioritizing socially vulnerable and minority communities. Day one, the mayor fired the leader of this program and tanked the program. This move cost Nashville between $600,000 and $10 million and leaves no time to reappropriate these ARP funds to vulnerable populations judiciously. The Metro Arts Commission has been working to fulfill its charter to fund arts organizations based on need rather than connections. The commissioners got their hands slapped for doing the right thing, and they need someone to blame. Cue an audit of the executive director's work and harassment of him that's being investigated by Metro HR. These three programs are unrelated, except that they were led by people of color, benefit the most vulnerable Nashvillians, and are on the verge of being sold for parts by this administration. If this administration is so progressive, make them prove it. Don't tolerate it when they allow progressive leaders in their own government to be thrown under the bus. Every program has issues. Only programs that aren't a priority get derailed because of them. When administrations want programs to work, they make them work. I know they can do this work if they want. Make them want to do it. You can fund as much as you want, but funding the work won't work unless you hold the city accountable to do the work. You hold the purse strings. When they make promises they don't keep, cut those strings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. And that is all for our public comment sign-up period today. We do have a presentation from the Department of Finance on our capital spending plan, and that is item 1 on our agenda. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Finance for their presentation. And colleagues, we are only going to be able to take 1 or 2 questions because we do have a time restraint as we do have other meetings today. So we're going to get through a couple of questions if we can, but then if there are additional questions, we're going to give you all the opportunity to please send that over to Director Darby so that we can get them answered by Finance.
Thank you. There we go. My name is Aaron Pratt. I'm the budget officer for the Department of Finance. First, I would like to thank Chair Porterfield, members of the Budget and Finance Committee, Vice Mayor, and the members of council for having us today. This is Sneh Patel, Dr. Patel. She's the DEI manager with the Department of Equity and Inclusion. And we have Kristen Wilson here from the mayor's office helping us out today in the presentation of the capital spending recommendations. What we're going to go over today is the capital plan, introducing what you all have seen before, the debt metrics of where we need to be in order to fund a plan of this size, what the plan is made up of, some of the impact analysis that the mayor's office and Department of Equity and Inclusion has been compiling for us, and then how do we get to the deauthorization of $14 million from prior CSPs. So you'll see a couple of numbers in this presentation. The total capital spending plan is $514 million, but the target of $500 million is comprised of the original 514 of the CSP plan, $14 million for projects that have lapsed and closed that were identified by departments that no longer needed to be in the CSP plan, so those will be deauthorized. And that brings us to a net total of $500 million of a CSP that will be filed. The $514 million is well in our debt range of below 14%, which has historically been the target for Metro. You see with this is 13.55%, so we're well within the target of where we need to be in order from the budget in order to fund a CSP of this size. Some of the departments, and I appreciate the department's help with this, some of the departments who will be receiving funding, this breakouts those departments in tier between the largest funded departments, MMPS at $105.9 million, which is 20% of the CSP, and then other departments on the continuum of going down to police, who has $3 million, or 0.06% of the CSP that's currently being filed. I do also want to note that there is an amount, the 1% for the arts is $1.63 million. That's identified for projects that are eligible to be calculated as far as the 1% for the arts. Construction projects aren't really identified and calculated in that total. So just in case anyone was trying to look at the CSP and come to what's 1% of the arts, I just wanted to identify that specifically. We are holding $21 million in contingency for these CSP projects because sometimes we need the contingency and sometimes we can deauthorize like we did before. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Sneh Patel to go over some of the community impacts and observations.
And thank you, Chair Porterfield, Vice Mayor Henderson, and council members for having me here today to discuss this. So you've seen kind of a summary of some of the nuts and bolts about what the CSP is. But when we're talking about the impact, what it has to be, we need to go a little bit deeper and start talking in terms that have more relevance to people. So when we talk about community impact, what's some of those funds going to? Well, we know that a large portion of it is going to MMPS, and that's going to be affecting how many large number of students in the region. We also know that's going to be about a large number of sidewalks. So if we think about what people are saying, what am I getting out of this? It's you can have the linear feet of the sidewalks, but also in terms of like maintenance of our investments that we already have. So paving of roads too. So this is what the CSP for 2024 gives us. One of the things that our office was particularly interested in is how we map these projects looking across different aspects of the populations we have here in Nashville. So while we all are Metro residents, we realize that we don't experience Metro in the same way. So one of the things that we worked to develop was a lens to look through that, and we settled on the Social Vulnerability Index. So this index was utilized by federal agencies such as the CDC to identify those populations when there's some kind of disaster, whether it be natural or man-made, and you find those populations who are going to need the most help or the most risk to suffer from that. And these factors look at different things such as who has access to a private vehicle or not. Where do we see rates of the highest health insurance? What's the minority status of these neighborhoods? What are the poverty levels, income levels? All these different factors go into creating that index number. So what you get from those 16 factors is a ranking. And those rankings tell us which areas have the highest areas of social vulnerability, those populations that exhibit the most of those vulnerabilities, and those that have the lowest. So looking at those projects from the CSP that have a locational or some kind of data that we can use, we can say from the overall budget that 49% of the CSP, that is projects that we know with some locational aspect, are going to those areas of high social vulnerability. And in our analysis too, as you can see from here, you can see what those rankings mean across for different departments. So which department has the most high-ranking vulnerabilities? Where are the investments going for our moderate to low across departments? And that's one of the ways that we've been trying to think about it. And so we used some of the data from the SVI, but we also used your district profiles, because that's another way that we like to think about these CSV projects, like how are they going to those populations here?
Thank you. And just to round out, I wanted to go over the deauthorization list. Two agencies, Finance and MMPS, has projects related to tornado and wind events that were priorly authorized. And since those events have been closed out, about $14 million, or actually $14 million, $10 million out of Finance and about $4 million out of MMPS were identified to be deauthorized in the CSP, along with the CSP, so that way that money is freed up for future. And with that, thank you. That's our presentation today.
Thank you so very much. Do we have any questions from council members? Councilmember Allen, you're recognized.
So on the deauthorization, just to clarify, MEGS had $6 million that was authorized for it, and it looks like we spent $3.7 million, so that was 2.3 that came back. But was all the work that needed to be done on that project as part of the tornado damage completed, and that's why we're okay finishing it out? How did we have that much extra money left over?
I'll turn.
And I'll certainly invite Mary Jo Wiggins to speak to this as well. The needs were addressed, and we had, several different opportunities that we looked at for funding for those tornado damage projects, ultimately through a combination of reimbursements, insurance, and the funding that was present. But I don't know if there's any further detail that you want to offer there.
Thank you, Chair. The only thing, I don't know specifically for MEGS But exactly what Ms. Wilson was saying is that the majority of the 10 million is all able to be eliminated. There was a precise timing of that March 3rd tornado that the CSP was being worked on, and without knowing if there was going to be a declaration or what insurance would cover, we put the reserves in for capital. And then when insurance and FEMA covered all of those costs, we can now remove those because that claim is almost complete. I don't know that Megs was specifically in there, but that's what.
Okay, that was just, and I may have read the numbers wrong, but that's very helpful to know. And thank y'all for figuring out how to pay for stuff and get help from all kinds of places. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Councilmember Druffel, you are recognized.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Where does that 14 million land? And is it just dedicated to capital, or where's it land and what could it be used for?
It's just the authorizing goes back into the pool. So it's actually a deauthorization of prior CSPs which have been closed out. So in future CSPs, you can authorize not that amount, but an amount. This is just a deauthorization of the amount that was prior approved. If a future CSP was increased or proposed from a CIB, more deauthorizations probably be at that time as well presented in order to offset the CSP being filed.
Okay, and I guess that's not a big number, but it's also relative to the projection on the capital budget expenses to our operating budget.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Druffel. Do we have any additional questions? Seeing none, we will go ahead and move forward. So according to Rule 21, this will have to be deferred for one meeting tomorrow at our council meeting. However, if we go ahead and defer it today in committee, it will automatically be deferred tomorrow on the floor, and it will have the ability to be re-referred to committee so that we can discuss this at our next committee meeting prior to taking it before the body. So with that, is there anyone who would like to move for a one meeting defer?
Gotten to that part of the agenda yet? We are still on the presentation.
I thought they were finished with the presentation.
They are finished with the presentation. Haven't gotten to that.
Thank you.
You do consent first and then move into it. If you want to skip consent and move straight to.
Gotcha. Okay. Sorry, guys. I jumped the gun just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and read the caption for this one. And I'm going to take this before the consent agenda just so that they can finish out what they're doing here. So this is for item number 2, RS 2024-194, Porterfield, referred to Budget and Finance Committee, an initial resolution determining to issue general obligation bonds of the Metropolitan government in an aggregate principal amount to not exceed $514 million. Can I get a motion? It has been moved and properly seconded. So now can we get a motion for deferral? It has been moved and it has been seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor for deferral say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Seeing none, the one meeting deferral passes 14 in favor, 0 against, and 0 not voting. And with that, thank you so much to our finance department for your presentation. So now we're going to go ahead and go into our consent agenda. The following items are being recommended for consent. Please let me know if there's something that you would like to have pulled off of consent. RS 2024-197, RS 2024-198, RS 2024-199, RS 2024-200, RS 2024-201, RS 2024-202, RS 2024-203, RS 2024-204, RS 2024-205, RS 2024-206, RS 2024-207, RS 2024-208, RS 2024-209, RS 2024-210, RS 2024-211, RS 2024-212, RS 2024-213, RS 2024-214, RS 2024-215, RS 2024-218, RS 2024-223, RS 2024-225, RS 2024-226, RS 2024-227, RS 2024-229, RS 2024-230, RS 2024-231, RS 2024-233, BL 2024-155, BL 2024-156, BL 2024-158. Are there any items that anyone would like to have bumped from the consent agenda? Councilmember Huffman, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick clarification, was item number 28, 2024-222 on the consent?
It is not on the
It is
consent.
not. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Allen, you're recognized.
RS 2024-205.
Okay, 205 is pulled from the consent agenda. All right, is there anything that anyone else? Councilmember Soror, you're recognized.
My apologies. Is 204 under consent?
It is, but we can take it off for you.
Yes, ma'am, if you would.
Okay.
And then what about 209?
209 is currently on consent. Would you like me to take it off?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
All right, 204, 205, and 209 have now been removed from the consent agenda. Is there anything else that anyone would like to remove from the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, we will go ahead and go through the consent, reading the captions. RS 2024-197 accepts the terms of a cooperative purchase and master agreement for cloud-based computing for computer-aided dispatch interface communication solutions for the Department of Emergency Communications. RS 2024-198 appropriates grant funds from the Martha O'Brien Center's Tennessee Opportunity Pilot Initiative Implementation Grant and the Metropolitan Action Commission to formalize the parties' relationship while collaborating on direct services, capacity building, collaborative activities, and grant compliance. RS 2024-199 accepts the terms of a cooperative purchase and master agreement for Money Network pay card services for the Metropolitan Finance Department. RS 2024-200 amends Resolution RS 2022-1560 to include Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition's revised scope of services. RS 2024-201 amends Resolution RS 2022-1450, which appropriated $5,546,000 in the American Rescue Plan Act funds to the United Way of Greater Nashville to extend the projected program term through December 31st, 2024. RS 2024-202 amends Resolution RS 2022-1904, which appropriated $2 million in the American Rescue Plan Act funds from Fund Number 30216 to the YWCA, Nashville and Middle Tennessee for repairs and infrastructure improvements to the Weaver Domestic Violence Center to include an updated scope of work. RS 2024-203 amends the Resolution RS 2022-1905 to extend Fisk University's time to complete the physical build-out of Burris Hall and to permit the use of $500,000 of the previously appropriated American Rescue Plan's funds for personnel and employee benefits. RS 2024-206 accepts the terms of the Cooperative Purchasing Master Agreement for emergency and specialty vehicles, equipment, and accessories and related supplies and services for the General Services Department. RS 2024-207 accepts the terms of a cooperative purchasing master agreement for electric vehicle supply, equipment, and related services for the General Services District. RS 2024-208 accepts the terms of a cooperative purchasing master agreement for automotive parts and accessories for light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles for the General Services Department. RS 2024-210 approves a grant contract between the Metropolitan Board of Health and the Mental Health Co-op to help operate the Mental Health Crisis Treatment Center and provide emergency psychiatric care, including crisis stabilization, respite care, and treatment. RS 2024-211 approves an American Heart Association site agreement between Premedics, Inc., doing business as Training Center Services, and the Metropolitan Board of Health for students to take course BLS Heart Saver. RS 2024-212 approves Amendment 1 to a grant from the Tennessee Department of Health to the Metropolitan Board of Health for Family Planning Services. RS 2024-213 approves Amendment 2 to a strengthening public health infrastructure, workforce, and data systems grant from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to the Metropolitan Board of Health to implement workforce strategies to build organizational resilience, promote employee well-being, and enhance workforce performance while focusing on building healthier communities. RS 2024-214 approves the application for the Coordinated Entry Process Grant from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to the Office of Homeless Services to support the work of coordinated entry through staffing, program evaluation, and community education. RS 2024-215 approves the application for the Continuum of Care Collaborative Applicant Grant from the Nashville Continuum of Care to the Office of Homeless Services to address the critical problem of homelessness through a coordinated community-based process of identifying needs and building a homeless response system of housing and services to address those in need. RS 2024-218 accepts a donation from Rochelle Apartments LP in the amount of $145,000 as a contribution towards the construction costs for the 12th Avenue South Complete and Green Streets project. RS 2024-223, approves the application for the 2024 Road to Zero Community Traffic Safety Grant from the National Safety Council to NDOT to end fatalities on our roads by 2050. RS 2024-255 authorizes the Department of Law to compromise and settle the claims of Premier Construction, Dustin Case, Joseph Dangerfield, Ridgemont Homes, and Riverside Remodeling and Construction against the Metropolitan Government in the amount of $44,588.69 to be paid out of the NDOT Sidewalk Fund. RS 2024-226 approves the contract between the Metropolitan Government and DataVale Corporation for the provision of software consulting services. RS 2024-227 approves Amendment 1 to the contract between the Metropolitan Government and the Light Wave Renewables LLC for the design, construction, operation, management, and administration services related to solar facilities. RS 2024-229 approves a memorandum of agreement between United States Environmental Protection Agency, the Department of Water and Sewerage Services, and the Tennessee Historical Commission for the process advancements of the Water Treatment Plant Project, Davidson County, Tennessee. RS 2024-230 accepts the terms of a cooperative purchasing and master agreement for workplace solutions, such as uniform rentals for the Water Services Department. RS 2024-231 accepts the terms of a cooperative purchasing and master agreement for route management hardware and software solutions for the Water Services Department. RS 2024-233 authorizes the Department of Law to compromise and settle the property damage claim of Darrell K. Jenkins against the Metropolitan Government in the amount of $21,531, with said amount to be paid out of the Self-Insured Liability Fund. BL 2024-155 authorizes the granting of an easement to the Electric Power Board on a parcel or property owned by the Metropolitan Government. BL 2024-156 approves an agreement between the Nashville Fire Department Emergency Medical Services Division and TriStar Skyline Medical Center for clinical training of residents in emergency medicine. BL 2024-158 approves a lease agreement between the Metropolitan Government and Friends of Scobey Park, a Tennessee nonprofit corporation, for the Naval Building and Grounds in Scobey Park. Is there anything else that anyone would like to have pulled from the consent agenda? Seeing none, can I get a motion? It has been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the consent agenda passes. 14 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. And we already voted on item number 2 on the agenda. So we're going to go ahead and move to item number 3. RS 2024-195 reduces the authority of the Metropolitan government to issue general obligations bonds pursuant to certain initial resolutions previously adopted by the Metropolitan County Council. Can I get a motion? It has been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. All opposed, nay. Any not voting? Resolution passes, 14 in favor, 0 against, and 0 not voting. RS 2024-196, Porterfield appropriates $22,848,000 from the General Fund Reserve Fund for the purchase of equipment and building repairs for various departments. Can I get a motion? Is there a second? It has been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Sora, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. On the questionnaire, I think I had 2 departments, and that was Water Services and NDOT, that indicated that the previous appropriation has not been complied with. And so I was just, and I did send an email earlier to see if someone will be here to answer, to be able to see why the previous appropriation was not complied with and why are we giving more money if we haven't followed the rules for the last one. And then on the finance one, there is a new technology that is supposed to help with procurement. And since we have so many, it's new, it's not a replacement, it's a brand new technology. With the conversation on procurement, I just wanted to know what that technology is for and what it does.
Thank you so much. Do we have someone who would like to, Ms. Wiggins, do you? Councilmember Sora, which departments in particular were you asking your questions about? Okay, so we can start with finance, and then we will go to water and then NDOT. Okay, so we're going to come back to finance, and we'll start with NDOT since I see Mr. Purvis at the podium. You're recognized.
Hey, council members. Matt Purvis with NDOT. Ultimately, this is a general services question. When it comes to our fleet, the best we can do as NDOT is ask general services for what we need as to, you know, us actually getting the vehicles that we were allocated and asked for. That's not really a question we can answer. I know that's not much of an answer, but.
Councilmember Sora, you're recognized.
Thank you. So the question asked, what about prior appropriation? Did we comply with the intended purposes and use? It says no. And so that was the question. So is there any reason why we did not comply? Are you saying it's just the money part that we didn't comply with?
It is a general services bill. I can't fully answer why that was filled out that way.
Okay.
All I know is that we were allocated, you know, every year we're allocated vehicles that we ask for. We haven't received some vehicles that we've asked for in prior years. That might be why it was answered no.
So was that answered by NDOT or answered by General Services?
General Services. They manage our fleet.
Okay, all right. I'll forward that to them.
Thank you. You are recognized.
Hi, Kristen Cumrow with NDOT. I believe the non-compliance was related to some winter weather trucks that we had asked be reallocated to us in last fiscal year. It's basically allowing us to keep the trucks that we had on hand for the following year, and I don't believe that that happened. So that was one of the reasons why we asked for additional winter weather equipment. But that would be the non-compliance in that they did not allow us to keep the trucks that we had in our fleet in the previous year.
Thank you. Councilmember Sora, do you have a follow-up for NDOT?
No, thank you. And just to be clear is that if we have money that we haven't finished using before we ask for more money and tie it up for the department, that's what the clarification was needed for, so thank you.
And we do have someone here from Metro Water. You're recognized. If you could just say your name and introduce yourself.
Hey there, Amanda Deaton-Moyer, Metro Water Assistant Director for Business and Finance. For water and for waste services, the 4% request that you see before you is for carts. The small bit of 4% funding that has not been used, and that's the non, it just has that it hasn't been used yet. And it's a small amount for convenience center upgrades that we are under contract and we're working through.
You have any additional questions for that department? Okay, and we are trying to get someone from finance up. So we have someone coming up, coming back in 1 moment, Councilmember Sora. All right, we have Ms. Wiggins that's going to take that question.
Thank you, Chair. The technology for procurement will assist in the scope of writing the work and the specific drafting. So when it comes to like RFPs and RFQs, so that we can have more specific drafting. It's just a new software, another technology.
Councilmember Sora, you recognized? Okay. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Evans, you're recognized.
Thank you. This question is kind of like in alignment with what Councilmember Suara was asking about, kind of related to the 4% funds. But I just wondered if there in this, I can ask this, or if you would, I can get the council office to email you, Chair, to ask this. But general services, can we get some more information related to all these vehicle purchases and like what's still slated to come, what's not coming forever, you know, that kind of thing, because we keep hearing about vehicles and us not getting them, or they're taking a really long time to get them. And I think that would be very informative for us to see what's still outstanding.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Evans. And you are recognized at the back podium. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Yes, my name is Gerald Smith, and I'm the new Director of General Services. And I will be flanked here with our fleet manager, and Randall will, I'm sorry, not Randall, but Stacy will provide you with kind of an overview of what our process is when we replace our fleet. We're in a constant and continuous cycle of replacing fleet. The fleet that's being replaced is replacing fleet that's being discontinued or taken out of service, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll let you take over.
Hello, I'm Stacy Wall. Pleased to answer any questions that you may have. I'm not sure exactly the question that you're asking me directly. Could we repeat that question?
Councilmember Evans, you're recognized.
Sure. I was just kind of connecting the dots, I think, between kind of the discussion that Councilmember Suara asked about the 4% funds and the vehicles that had not kind of arrived or gotten here. That the answer, no, I think it was on the worksheet related to what NDOT was asking for, and kind of other departments where vehicle conversations have come up. Like I'm thinking Metro Health with animal control, and you know, there are probably some other ones that we've heard about kind of in passing where things are on order and maybe haven't gotten here and those kinds of things. And so I guess it's kind of like the big picture of like what vehicles are in the process of being ordered and what's come in, what's not come in. And I think that also came up related to the conversation around the snow removal and just the process that NDOT has gone through, you know, with you all to order some replacement vehicles that will be here, some in February, some in May, that kind of stuff. So I think if there's any big picture information you can share about vehicles and, you know, via email or something that just has like, here's everything we've ordered and here's what's coming in and those kinds of details, it would be helpful to connect the dots.
Sure, we'd be happy to follow up with any emails, answers that we may have for you guys. But to kind of give you an overview, over the last 3 budget years, we've ordered around 1,733 vehicles. and we've actually received 1,248. You guys have been very generous to us as far as replacing the equipment, and we have been working on it diligently to get them replaced. A lot of the replacement plan, actually, it's been replaced. It's about probably half of our fleet's been approved. We haven't seen it because of backlogs and stuff like that, as far as equipment shortages and various stuff like that. But it is in the pipeline, and it is moving forward. So as far as the snow trucks, yes, there's 37, I think, total. We have snow trucks ordered. We've got one new one in right before the snow. We still have 36 remaining on order. 9 of those are additions that were approved, I think in FY '22. And so they are moving forward.
Councilmember Evans, you're recognized.
Thank you. Your response just triggered another question that I had on the, to help me understand, when you're ordering all of those, and I don't know anything about the ordering process, so it's my ignorance here, but do we have to pay for all those up front when you place the order, or do you have to pay a deposit, or does it depend on the provider, or do you pay when they arrive?
We pay once they arrive.
Thank you.
We have to work with the departments to write specifications and then move forward with the orders.
Thank you.
I know it seems like it took a long time to get the equipment, but truly it's in line. And if we don't fund our replacement program, we lose our place in line, and it just makes it worse as we move forward.
Councilmember Evans, do you have any additional questions? Okay, thank you so very much. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Any not voting? Motion carries, 14 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. Moving on to RS 2024-204, as we have a mass exodus leaving the back of the room right now. Approves the first amendment to a grant contract for constructing affordable housing approved by RS 2022-1857 between the Metropolitan Housing Trust Fund Commission and Thistle Farms Incorporated. Can I get a motion? Is there a second? And for the individuals in the galley, we are still conducting business up here, so it's a little hard to hear. Is there any discussion on RS 2024-204? Councilmember Sora, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. In looking at all the amendments to the contract, most of them are just extending the date. This particular one, though, it appears as if we are also reducing the number of housing. So it's cutting the number of housing from 3 to 2. And so I just wanted someone to be able to tell us what happened in this particular case.
Thank you, Councilmember Sora. You are recognized in the back. If you could, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excuse me. I'm Karen Weaver. I'm the Barnes Housing Trust Fund Manager. Councilwoman Suara, and all of the council members, for Thistle Farms, they had originally applied for round 10 funding from Barnes. Their application, they applied for 3 units, but only 2 of those would be funded by Barnes. One of them, the third one, was above the 80% limit, but they showed it on their application, but not for Barnes funding. But when the contract was written, the person who did the contract had accidentally picked up that 3rd unit as a unit for Metro to have the contract on. So that was all. It was just a clerical error.
Thank you so very much. Councilmember Sora, do you have any additional questions? Okay. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries 14 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. RS 2024-205, Porterfield Gamble Welsh and Vote approves the first amendment to a grant contract for constructing affordable housing approved by RS 2022-1443 between the Metropolitan Housing Trust Fund Commission and Rebuilding Together Nashville. Can I get a motion? It's been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Allen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just need to be marked as abstaining.
Thank you so very much. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any against? Anyone else not voting? Motion carries 13 in favor, 0 against, and 1 not voting. Moving on to RS 2024-209, Porterville Bradford accepts the terms of cooperative purchase and master agreement for video cameras and controllers for the Information Technology Services Department. Can I get a motion? It has been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Somebody bumped it off consent. Councilwoman Sora? You got your answer? Okay. All right. Seeing how there's no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Anyone not voting? Motion carries 14 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. The next item on the agenda, RS 2024-216, has been withdrawn from the agenda. The next item that we will discuss is RS 2024-217, Porterfield Evans, authorized the Department of Law to compromise and settle the claims of Kimberly Jones Mabwe against the Metropolitan government in the amount of $250,000, with said amount to be paid out of the self-insured liability fund. Can I get a motion? Is there a second? It's been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Evans, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to comment that this was a settlement that was really troubling to me personally. And, we discussed in Rules Committee, when Director Dietz was reappointed. And so he and I had a productive conversation where I was able to ask him a lot of detail related to this settlement process and some of the things that we learned in our email. And ultimately, I'm very supportive of this settlement and appreciate the additional time from the administration to kind of address my concerns. And I know everybody in here will likely support it, but I think it should be the maximum of $300,000. But at the same time, I understand kind of where we were as a city, and also, of course, the individual who brought forward the case. So just wanted to add those comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Evans. Is there any additional discussion? Councilmember Kimbrough, you're recognized.
When Councilmember mentioned this case, I recall it as well. And I also think it should be the max. I think a young lady was killed by her estranged husband. And I think the police failed to act or something to that effect. But on this one, I'm going to abstain because I think it should be $300,000, only for that reason.
Thank you, Councilmember Kimbrough. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay? Anyone else not voting? Motion carries 13 in favor, 0 against, and 1 not voting.
I'm sorry. Mine was up.
I have you as an abstention.
Thank you. Yeah.
The next item is RS 2024-221. Porterfield Parker Walsh approves the application from the Tennessee Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Grant from the Tennessee Department of Transportation to NDOT to establish an accessible and reliable electric vehicle charging infrastructure network that benefits the entire community, with a particular focus on disadvantaged areas by replacing, upgrading, and installing new electric vehicle charging system at various site locations throughout Nashville. That is being withdrawn. Moving on to RS 2024-222, Porterfield and Parker approves the application for the U.S. DOT Intersection Safety Challenge Grant with the U.S. Department of Transportation to NDOT to ensure optimal safety at critical intersections by updating safety software to analyze and predict traffic patterns. That is also being withdrawn. Which brings us to RS 2024-228, Porterfield Parker approves Amendment 1 to the contract between the Metropolitan and Platform Capital Waste Solutions, LLC, for the provision of solid waste collection. Can I get a motion? Is there a second? It has been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Soror, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I just need someone I know that we've had problem with waste pickup, and I understand the need for getting a better contract and all of that. But when I'm looking at the numbers, the original contract was for 27 months, and we paid $6 million. Went to 18 months of that, and now we're adding an additional 5 million. So I was just trying to see, was there an increase in services? Did we extend the number of places we're going to? I mean, it is not, the number doesn't work the same way, and I understand that, but I just want to understand what makes us pay that much for the latter part of the contract.
Thank you for that question, Councilmember Soror. We do have someone in the back from Metro Water. You're recognized.
Hey there, Amanda Deaton-Moyer with Metro Water Services. So excellent point made by you, but what has happened is that when we first got the contract, you'll recall it was a bit of a tumultuous time. Red River had just gone under bankruptcy. We needed, and they had sold the company, and we were trying to get services provided. And in that process, we estimated what the cost for 2.5 years, because that contract does expire in November of this year, and we said that's what we need. Well, what ended up getting into the contract with all of that was $6 million. That was actually the estimate for 1 year, was $6 million. So speed up, what happened then was we looked at what platform Waste was going to be able to handle and be able to take on, and the team decided to better diversify the vendor grouping. So we took some of those routes away from platform and gave them to another vendor. That helped us diversify our service providing, because we'd been to a place where we all had it in one basket. And so we reduced the services. So if we had done it perfectly when we estimated it, it probably would have been about 15 million for 2.5 years times 6. But instead, we are coming to you today to ask for an additional $5 million because that's going to get us to November. So it started with an error in that we only estimated 1 year at the time. And then but we made it less. We made it a lot further without coming to this body because we actually reduced the routes in which they were doing the service they were providing. And those routes, just because that might be the next question, where did they go? Went to Waste Pro.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Soror. Do you have any follow-up questions?
Thank you, and that makes a whole lot of sense. But what I wanted to know is of the 6 million that I earmarked for the first year, as you said, we're now into 18 months. So did we get invoiced for that 16 months?
To date, we spent $5.7 million. So we are not yet to that $6 million line. In 2 months, we'll be over it. We need your help.
Okay. And the reduction, why we're not using up all of it, is also because you reduced some of the routes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any not voting? Motion carries 14 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. Which brings us to what I believe to be the last item on the agenda, BL 2024-153, Wiener, amending section 15.64.035 of the Metropolitan Code of Law. May I get a motion? Is there a second? It has been moved and properly seconded. Councilmember Evan Siegel, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. We asked some questions about this in transportation and infrastructure as well. Just a few follow-up questions on that. Has anybody threatened to sue us over these fees at this time?
I will give that to legal.
I hadn't been involved in a conversation where somebody threatened. I thought it's possible somebody from Water Services might have had a conversation like that.
Could you state your name for the record, please?
I'm Tom Cross at Metro Legal.
Thank you. And that looks like the director in the back. If you could please identify yourself.
I'm Scott Potter, Director of Metro Water. No one has threatened us with any kind of legal action.
Thank you, Mr. Potter. Councilmember Evan Siegel, you're recognized.
And just to clarify, I think what we discussed in transportation and infrastructure is that these might be legal, but they're a little bit harder to defend. And because they're harder to defend, we're going to throw out the fee in over 90% of the county, which also is only 2% of fees estimated to be collected. Is that correct?
Legal, you're recognized.
There were. I might object to form.
Fair.
So what we discussed in the previous committee meeting was we have an ordinance on the books that says it applies to everybody, and there was a proposed resolution that wasn't clear in a lot of people's judgment, including mine. So we wanted to rewrite it to fix that problem. In addition, our office was asked, would it be justifiable to have it written such that it doesn't apply to everybody in the county. And we think it could, given the way we provide stormwater, and what the capacity fee is intended to do. And I'll go over it again if you think it would be helpful for this committee to hear it. The capacity fees in the water and sewer context, where it's a little easier to think about and think about sewer. If you want to connect to our sewer line, there's a certain amount of unused capacity in the line at that point. But as more people connect to it, that capacity gets absorbed. And if Water Services doesn't do something about that in the long term, it means nobody else can connect. So the capacity fees are intended to provide them a source of revenue to stay ahead of that and make sure that they're adding capacity in the system when they need to. We hadn't had a capacity fee for stormwater until about this time last year when the council adopted one. So that with that as the background, there are parts of the county that are served by closed pipe systems. That's the sort of the central core of Nashville, which is served mostly by a combined water or stormwater and sewer system. And then there are parts of the county, the sort of infill areas, where they're also served by primarily closed pipe systems. But there are lots of the county where it's ditches basically, and they're not going to be upgrading capacity and where there are ditches. There's not much you can do about that, including with a culvert. And so, yes, it's legally justifiable. And in addition, we got a push from the Court of Appeals, Federal Court of Appeals decision that invalidated part of our sidewalk ordinance, which calls into question the validity of charging people for a service that you're unlikely to provide to them down the road.
Councilmember Evan Siegel, you're recognized.
On those systems where we just have ditches now, how does adding sidewalks affect the need for capacity?
It doesn't, the sidewalks and the stormwater conveyances are not directly related, but the legal reasoning is. So the basis for the court's decision had to do with requiring a nexus between what you're charging and what you're providing, and not to get too far in the weeds on the sidewalk ordinance, but in a lot of those cases, we're requiring people to build sidewalks where there wasn't a master plan showing any likelihood of connection down the road. And so again, in the parts of the county, the so-called MS4, the part of the county that's not served by the combined system, it's open ditches for the most part, and there's not much you can do to change the capacity of a ditch. You can make it wider, but not deeper, because it's it's dependent on the grade to function.
Councilmember Evan Siegel.
I think maybe my question is really one for water, which is, does building sidewalks where we don't have sidewalks affect stormwater capacity? Because I think that I've always understood those are related and also a hindrance to being able to build sidewalks. If this is the case, does waiving the fee then affect our ability to add the capacity necessary to actually build sidewalks? So it's not a legal question so much as
I will happily yield to Mr. Potter.
Director Potter, you're recognized.
I really don't understand your question.
Councilmember Evan Siegel, you're recognized.
I mean, I think it seems a little bit, as I said earlier, like throwing out the baby with the bathwater and saying we're just not going to, stormwater is an issue all over the county, particularly when we go to add sidewalks, particularly where we need infrastructure, and saying 90 to 95% of the county doesn't need capacity. I'm just trying to figure out how we really made that firm determination when we hear all the time from constituents that stormwater is one of their major problems, and we hear that stormwater is the impediment to building housing and infrastructure throughout the city.
Director, you're recognized.
Well, I guess I'll explain what we've done. We've initiated a stormwater master planning process, and that's going to identify the projects that we need to do countywide to improve the stormwater system. The stormwater system can be thought of as a utility, just like water and sewer can be thought of as a utility. The stormwater capacity fee is independent of that study because the way we fund improvements in the MS4, which is outside the combined system, is through our established stormwater user fee, which was passed in 2009? Yes, sir. 2009. This fee would be identified for use in the combined system, which has a more definable capacity demand. Berkeley, what do you think about that?
Councilmember Evan Siegel, you're recognized.
When is that study expected to be complete?
It's got a ways to go because we started from zero because we've never done a stormwater capacity fee for the entire county. So we're going into almost 100 stormwater basins and individually studying them. So I'll get an update about when it is expected to be completed and send that to you in the morning. I just don't want to guess presently.
Is it reasonable from legal's perspective to say that if only 2% of the fee is in the questionable area, that's a risk that we could choose to accept while we wait on the report to determine that we don't need these fees?
Mr. Cross, you're recognized.
The risk question is really one it's really sort of a policy question for the council to answer. You know, we philosophically, I think there is more risk given the night decision than there was before. And just to add a little bit to what Mr. Potter was saying, the stormwater improvements, I mean, stormwater is an issue countywide, but most of the stormwater improvements that get done for garden variety stormwater projects, reestablishing ditches, replacing culverts and things like that are done out of a separate funding source, sort of the user fee for that stormwater utility. So it's kind of up to you as a policy question to say, is it worth taking that risk? We are in a more vulnerable position after that night decision than we were before.
Councilmember Evan Siegel, you're recognized.
I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Soror, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. So what I'm hearing is that the fee that we'll be losing is about 700,000, which is the 2% of the 35 million that we're projected to be collected. So for that 700,000, if we do go ahead with it, then we expose ourselves to the possibility of being sued.
Mr. Cross, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. We could be sued either way. I think our odds of successfully defending a suit challenging that ordinance based on the services that we're intending to provide in the MS4 area are much higher.
Councilmember Soror, you're recognized.
So, and I'm just looking at the numbers. So that 700,000 that we putting aside and said we're not going to charge in that area, that 2% area of the county, is it something that after the study comes back, we can adjust the fee and then put that back on at that time?
Mr. Cross?
The council could certainly do that. I personally don't see how that is going to affect the risk posture with respect to litigation.
Thank you. I guess the point I'm trying to make is that when I look at, I'm not a lawyer, but when I look at the risk of being sued and returning money, we're talking about how much money are we keeping to expose ourselves to that, is the point that I'm trying to make, is that the area that gives the most money is already covered. Of that 35 million, we'll get 34,300,000. And so it's only 700 that we're trying to save ourselves from exposing ourselves to risk. And so that 700,000 is worth living, in my opinion, so that we don't put ourselves in trouble. And then when it's determined that we can build that 2% of the county, that 700,000, then we can do that at that point. So that's just what I'm trying to get at. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Soror. Councilmember Evan Siegel, you're recognized. Oh, just kidding. Now you're recognized.
I'm loud, but I'm not that loud. I just want to confirm, I think for those who are watching at home or trying to catch up and don't get council emails, the process to determine this is a fee started in 2019. Is that correct?
Mr. Cross, you're recognized.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
I think it's actually a water question. I think you're off the hook, sir.
Director, you are recognized. Director Potter, you're recognized.
I can't remember the exact date, but I would say 2019 is a good ballpark. We've been working on this a long time.
Councilmember Evan Siegel.
think I would just point out that if we have been working on it this long, the chances that we don't need it are very low. You can get sued for anything at any point. And we know that stormwater is a problem everywhere, not just in that tiny combined sewer system in the middle of the city.
Thank you, Councilmember Evans Siegel. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Weiner, you are recognized.
Thank you. I would like to ask Mr. Potter to please come back to the lectern. Oh, good, you're there. If I'd turned around, I'd have seen you. I was trying to look at the chair. Thank you, Chair, I appreciate it. Could you please explain in the MS4 and outside of the MS4 that 2% of the money that we are going to set aside if we pass this ordinance, isn't there a place where the money comes for that missing money?
Yes.
That we have a different source?
Right.
Where that money comes from? We're talking apples and oranges. Can you please explain that?
Yes, to refresh the council's memory and to educate some of our new members, in 2007 or so, we began a stormwater user fee study because we had never had a dedicated fund to perform maintenance on the stormwater system. And the council passed an ordinance that established a stormwater user fee that provides for about $35.8 million per year in stormwater funding. From that funding, we are responsible to maintain compliance with our permit and to do debt service on capital investment, O&M expenses on repairing the infrastructure that currently exists, plans review, and things like that. That's the stormwater user fee that you likely have heard about on the campaign trail. As an example, at my home, I pay $3 a month. Most single-family residences pay about $3 a month. Some $4.50, some $6. So there's also a fee associated with being a commercial business. That has been established since 2009. This is a separate fee revenue stream that would be applied to the combined system, which, to kind of give you all an idea how big it is, it's 8,484 acres, so it's pretty big. And it's the combined system exclusive of the MS4. So we do have an established fee that we use to do repairs in the MS4. This will provide an additional $35 million to do work in the combined system. I could go on in enormous detail about how this is beneficial to the city. You may have heard about our consent decree that we're required to do a bunch of projects under an order from the Department of Justice. This $35 million will aid greatly in removing flow into the combined system, providing adherence to what's called the 9 minimum controls, which we are required to maintain as a result of the consent decree. So this is really good for us. That additional $35 million will enable us to do some really good investment in the combined system. Is that a good summary?
Councilmember Weiner, you're recognized.
Thank you. So in a nutshell, guys, I served on budget for 8 years. I've never been the person to want to take money away from Metro government. However, in this circumstance, we have another funding source. We have an active funding source right now. We are not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We're keeping us from throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So if we don't pass this, yes, we're at risk. There is a risk that we could lose the entire 35 million.
That's correct.
That's not a risk I'm willing to take. So I would appreciate your support again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Weiner. Is there any additional discussion? Looking at the front row, looking at my at-larges, none. All right, no additional discussion. All right, seeing none. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions? One abstention. So we have one no vote and one abstention. Was there anyone else that we missed? All right, so motion carries 12 in favor, 1 against, and 1 not voting. That is the end of the Budget and Finance meeting. We will immediately start our joint meeting with Budget and Finance and Public Health and Safety in just one moment, and that will be a very brief meeting, y'all, so please don't leave.